Cancun's white sand beaches are buried under brown, slimy seaweed that reeks of rotten eggs. The smell is so bad it closes schools, hotels are losing millions, and across the Caribbean, governments are spending $210 million a year just to shovel it off the beaches and into landfills. This seaweed shouldn't be here at all. And in 2011, the problem became even worse. The seaweed escaped, and now there's a 5,000-kilometer belt of it stretching from West Africa to the Caribbean, so massive you can see it from space. The problem required a radical solution, and what you're about to discover is how the mission to remove seaweed not only saved tourism but transformed communities, built unimaginable wealth, and inspired innovations of the future. But before we get to that, we first need to understand what this stuff actually is. Sargassum is a brown algae covered in tiny air-filled bladders called pneumatocysts. Those little berries keep it buoyant, floating on the ocean surface its entire life. For centuries, sargassum lived in the Sargasso Sea, a bizarre stretch of the North Atlantic with no land borders, defined entirely by swirling ocean currents, trapping the seaweed in an endless loop. Christopher Columbus documented it in 1493 during his first voyage to the Americas. He wrote about great masses of floating algae where navigation was made to be hard. Sailors feared their ships would get stuck. But the sargassum stayed there, generation after generation, floating in the same patch of ocean, never bothering anyone. Until 2011. To understand what happened in 2011, you need to go back to 2004. That year, Brazilian farmers cleared 27,000 square kilometers of Amazon rainforest, an area the size of Massachusetts. It wasn't the first year of clearing, and it wouldn't be the last. Since the 1960s, Brazil had been turning rainforest into farmland, first cattle ranches and later on soybeans. Between 1990 and 2013, Brazil's soybean cropland tripled. Production increased tenfold, and by 2014, Brazil became the world's leading soybean exporter. But when you clear that much forest, the soil has nothing to hold it in place. When rain falls, it washes straight into rivers, and it takes everything with it. Topsoil, fertilizer, pesticides, nitrogen, and phosphorus. The Amazon River dumps all of that into the Atlantic Ocean, 209,000 cubic meters per second to be exact, and for decades, it became an agricultural waste pipe. On the other side of the Atlantic, the Congo River was doing the same thing. For 50 years, the Amazon and the Congo pumped nutrients straight into the tropical Atlantic. And in warm, slow-moving tropical waters, those nutrients don't disappear. They accumulate. They feed algae, they feed phytoplankton, and they feed sargassum. But even with all that fertilizer, sargassum stayed in the Sargasso Sea. The currents kept it contained. Until 2009. That year, something unusual happened. 2 consecutive years of a strong negative North Atlantic oscillation. A shift in atmospheric pressure that changed wind patterns and ocean currents across the entire Atlantic. The currents that had trapped sargassum for centuries suddenly shifted. And for the first time in recorded history, sargassum got swept out of the Sargasso Sea and pushed south. In 2011, sargassum hit the Caribbean, filling up the beaches of Barbados, Jamaica, and Mexico. Beaches that had been pristine for generations suddenly buried under brown seaweed. Governments assumed it was a freak event. It wasn't. 2012, it came back. 2013, worse. By 2018, satellites detected 20 million tons of sargassum floating in a continuous belt from West Africa to the Caribbean. Scientists gave it a name, the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, and it's been growing ever since. By 2015, Caribbean governments were desperate. They tried everything. Mechanical harvesters to scoop it from the ocean, floating barriers to block it from reaching shore, dump trucks to haul it to landfills. Some countries even tried burying it inland or burning it. Nothing worked. The sargassum kept coming faster than they could remove it, and every solution cost millions. Mexico alone was spending $70,000 per month just to keep 1 kilometer of beach clear. The US Virgin Islands declared a state of emergency. Hotels were losing tourists. Fishermen couldn't get their boats through the mats of seaweed clogging harbors. Everyone saw sargassum as a problem, except one person. In Puerto Morelos, a small coastal town south of Cancun, a gardener named Omar Vazquez was looking at the same problem differently. When sargassum started washing up in 2013, Omar saw fertilizer. He composted it and sold it to clients. By 2015, when the first major influx hit, he'd turned it into a business, employing 300 families to clean hotel beaches. But in 2018, 20 million tons of sargassum washed up on the beaches, the largest arrival of sargassum in history at the time. Omar couldn't sell it fast enough. The fertilizer market was saturated, and he lost his government cleanup contract. One sleepless night, Omar remembered his grandmother's adobe house in Guadalajara, thick clay walls that stayed cool in summer. What if sargassum could replace the straw in adobe bricks? So he started experimenting. First, he collected fresh sargassum from the beach and washed it thoroughly to remove the salt. Then he spread it on elevated racks under mesh tarps to dry in the sun. The UV exposure helped break down some of the organic compounds that cause the smell. After about 5 days of drying, he ground the sargassum into a coarse powder. A week of trial and error, he finally found the formula. Omar keeps his recipe a secret, but each brick, called Sargablocks, contained 40% dried sargassum, mixed with clay, limestone, and organic building materials. He modified an old Adobe brick-making machine to handle the mixture. Each brick went into a mold, got compressed, then laid out to cure in the sun for 4 hours. That first night, he left a stack of bricks outside. It poured with rain. In the morning, he checked them, and none of them had cracked. So he built a house with 2,150 blocks, using 20 tons of wet sargassum. He called it Casa Angelita, after his mother. That was 2018. Since then, Casa Angelita has survived 5 hurricanes and 6 tropical storms. Independent studies confirmed the bricks have a compressive strength of 7.5 to 11 megapascals, well above Mexico's building code requirements, and can last 120 years. They cost 50% less than traditional concrete blocks, and they're made from waste that's literally free. By 2023, Omar had built 40 to 50 houses, nearly half donated free to families who had nothing. Single mothers living in palm frond shelters, elderly couples, families with disabled children. His operation now employs 16 people full-time. They process 40 metric tons of sargassum every day. Between 2021 and 2023, they processed roughly 6,000 tons total. Countries across the Caribbean started calling. Colombia, Belize, Dominican Republic, Jamaica. Everyone wanted to know, could this also work for us? But here's the problem with Omar's solution. He processes 2,000 to 3,000 tons of sargassum per year. That's impressive for a small operation in Puerto Morelos. But in May 2025 alone, 38 million tons of sargassum washed ashore across the Caribbean. Omar is handling 0.0079% of the problem, less than 1/100th of 1%. Even if he had 100 factories running at full capacity, he'd still only process 300,000 tons per year. That's less than 1% of the 38 million tons that arrived in a single month. The scale of the sargassum crisis is so massive that no single solution can fix it. And it's not just Omar. Across the Caribbean, companies and researchers are racing to commercialize sargassum and turn this disaster into an industry. In Barbados, a startup called Rum and Sargassum is mixing seaweed with wastewater from rum distilleries to produce biogas that could fuel the island's entire taxi fleet. In Grenada, Sargas built a biodigester that feeds sargassum, food waste, and pig manure to methane-producing microbes. The gas now powers ovens at a local bakery, and the company has government approval for a much larger facility that could process 8,000 tons per year. In Finland, a company called Origin by Ocean extracts alginate and fucoidin from Caribbean sargassum. These are natural thickeners used in cosmetics and fabric dyes. In St. Lucia, an entrepreneur named Johan founded Altfiber to turn sargassum into biodegradable paper products and food packaging. And the list goes on. There are dozens of companies, millions in funding, and hundreds of brilliant minds working on the problem. And yet the problem keeps getting worse. Why? Well, sargassum is fundamentally unpredictable. Some years bring 20 million tons, other years bring 38 million. The arrival is seasonal, but the quantities vary wildly from one year to the next. That makes it almost impossible to build a stable business. You can't plan production around a resource that might double or disappear. And sargassum contains arsenic and heavy metals absorbed from the ocean. Before you can use it for anything, bricks, fertilizer, biofuel, you have to process it, dry it, and clean it. That takes time, space, and money. Plus, it rots fast. Within 48 hours of hitting the beach, it starts releasing hydrogen sulfide. You need infrastructure right on the beach to collect it in time, and most coastal communities don't have that. There's also no clear regulatory framework. No Caribbean-wide agreements that would let a company in Mexico sell products to customers in Jamaica or Barbados. The rules focus on cleanup, not commercialization. And there's a perception problem. As Omar himself said, if Sargablock had been invented in Germany or the United States, investors would be lining up. But it's a Mexican product made by a gardener who builds houses for poor people. That doesn't attract venture capital. All of these solutions combined, biogas, bricks, cosmetics, shoes, packaging, process maybe a few 100,000 tons of sargassum per year. Against 38 million tons arriving in a single month, it's nothing. Because sargassum isn't really a Caribbean problem. It's a symptom of something much larger. We're dealing with the consequences of 50 years of decisions made thousands of kilometers away by people who never imagined their soybeans would end up as seaweed-choking beaches in Cancun. And those consequences are accelerating. Climate change is warming the ocean, which makes sargassum grow faster. Ocean currents are slowing down, which means sargassum has more time to feed before it drifts to shore. And agricultural expansion isn't stopping. It's increasing across Brazil, the Congo, and Southeast Asia. More farms, more fertilizer, more runoff. The 38 million tons that arrived in May 2025, that's probably not the peak. Next year will likely be worse. Omar Vazquez can't solve the sargassum crisis. No one can. The ocean will keep producing it faster than any combination of solutions can process it. But he's proving something else, that even when a problem is too big to fix, there's still opportunity in how we respond to it. The sargassum will keep coming. The beaches will keep filling. Next year will probably be worse. But somewhere in Puerto Morelos, people are sleeping in homes, built from what everyone else threw away. That's not a solution, but it's a start. If you liked this story, then you'll definitely enjoy this one about the Wollemi pine in Australia. Click here to check it out.